One APIA Nevada is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Tonight's episode of Out in Front is brought to you by our season sponsors, Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt.
Battleborn Progress, so excited to have you for my last Out in Front of the year. I'll be on vacation next week, but our team will still be doing Out in Front next week live at 5 on Thursday, so you're not going to want to miss that. We're doing an end of year special, but before we get to that, we wanted to do a legislative preview with all of you because the legislature is coming in 2023. And that starts on February 6th, 2023. I will be moving to Carson City to continue to give them hell as I always do. But we're joined by some of our fabulous friends this evening who are progressive champions and do a lot of work with us at the Nevada legislature. So excited to have our guests tonight. The first guest we have is Assemblywoman Natha Anderson from Northern Nevada. She is a champion on so many of our issues. She is a member of NSEA and has done a lot of work for educators all across the state and more. So excited to talk to her about her bills that are coming in the legislature and also what she thinks is going to happen this legislative session. In addition to that, I also have Shane Piccinini. Did I say it right, Shane? Come in and correct me.
It's Piccinini, but close enough.
Piccinini. I was very close.
You were close.
Listen, I can butcher my fellow Italian's name. I apologize. So Shane is with the Northern Nevada Food Bank and does a lot of work at the legislature. He is a lobbyist along with me for good. So he will be joining us in just a little bit to talk about all of the good work that he's doing. And then we also have our very own Matilda Guerrero. She is going to be talking about the legislative experience and what is in store for all of you coming up. And she did a lot of work last session on things like redistricting and voting rights, but now she'll be working with BBP going into this session. Also, later in the show, we have our very own Shelby Schwartz. She's going to be talking about the Progressive Summit that's coming up in January and an exciting announcement that we had for the Progressive Summit today. So lots in store for this episode. All right, Assemblywoman, I want to bring you in. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. What is coming this session? I mean, we have a new Republican governor-elect. Unfortunately, we lost Governor Sisolak, and we will be engaging with Republican Governor Joe Lombardo, former sheriff of Clark County. So the legislature is going to look a little different this session. What are you thinking of? Like, what's the vibe of session going to be, and how is it all going to work?
Well, thank you. And thank you for doing this every week. I know it takes a lot of your team to do this. So I so appreciate you guys doing it every week and also to be part of it. The vibe right now is we're all really excited to be elected because remember, as the assembly, we have to run every 2 years. And so right now, I think many of us, myself included, are just excited to go back and to be able to make some positive changes. And so we're still in the process of trying to figure out what our final bills going to be, because those are all due. We have to file those bills by Monday of next week. So right now, I really don't feel that I can answer your question as much as you would like, because we just don't know yet. I think maybe it's because of my world as being an educator that I am naturally optimistic that many of us are bringing forward language that we hope will be positive and that will make the lives better and that can address the issues. I know that we're all very excited about the supermajority in the Assembly. Whoop, whoop. And we're also very excited about the majority in the Senate. Another big whoop, whoop. But we also have to have the reality. We can get it through both houses, but there's got to be a signature as well. And so I think that's a biggie. And that's kind of in the back of all of our minds of great that we're going to be fighting the good fight, but will that get a signature as well? I think the other thing is the divide that is facing our nation is also facing our state. And we have to figure out, what do we do? How do we work with each other to make lives better? It should not matter what party you're in. It really shouldn't. What should matter is how do we help each other? Wow, if that cannot be any more teacher Pollyanna and incredibly naive, look, give me another cliche and I'll sell it to you. But I mean, that really is, I think, one of the biggies that's in the back of my mind, in the back of many of the legislators, newly elected or returning that I've talked with. We want to get the work done. And we don't want to play some of the games that have been played in the past of let's wait a little bit. Let's do that. Let's just get the work done. Let's move on. As earlier today, I was talking with some colleagues that are actually on this call right now about some past legislators who were all senators, but they really just wanted to get the work done, whether it was Bernice Martin Matthews, who's up in the northern area, or Dina Titus and Maggie Carlton, who are in southern area. Get the work done, help our state. That's what our goal should be, period.
It's funny that you bring them up. We were talking about that earlier, but, I learned everything I know from people like Bernice Matthews and Dina Titus and Maggie Carlton, and they all legislated. Yes, Assemblywoman Carlton just stopped legislating under a Democratic trifecta, but they started legislating under Republican control, both Republican governor and Republican control of the state Senate. So they had to be scrappy and they had to kind of stand up for what was right. And they had to make compromise, of course. But there were some things that they just didn't make compromise on. And I was on a radio show this morning down here at KNPR, and I was with Senator Dallas Harris and Senator Robin Titus, and we were talking a lot about that, how Nevada is different in terms of legislating because people are willing to make compromises and work together and work across the aisle, which I do think is important in a lot of places. But one of the things I said on the show this morning, and I stand by, is I am not willing to compromise on our values, right? Things like vouchers, which is very much going to be one of the things that the governor ran on. He wants to negotiate on things like rolling back all of the good stuff we did on criminal justice reform or voting rights. Those are just non-starters for me. And I feel like those should be non-starters for all of our Democrats in the legislature. Where are you at on some of that? And how do you feel about negotiating against our own best interests and the progress we made last session?
When it comes to vouchers, I am a absolute no. And everybody that knows me knows that. There's no surprise about it. I believe in public education. I believe in a public education for all. And I've been very strong on that for a number of years. Before I was elected to office, there's no way on vouchers. I think some of the other issues as well, we need to be very strong. We need to be about human dignity, period. This morning, when I look at one of our online press groups, the Nevada Independent, I don't know if I'm supposed to say names or not, but I read that today, and about how we've got prisoners going through a hunger strike. That's an issue. We need to do something about that because, as I believe it was somebody actually from the Revolution time, and I don't know the person's name. I'm sure I could look it up because we all know how important Dr. Google is in our world right now. But how we treat our weakest individuals is who we are as a society. And if somebody is not being treated well in prison, in other areas, that is a statement about our society. That is not a statement about the person running the jail. That is a statement about our society. And that's why we need to continue to have these conversations, be aware that this is how we treat people, period. And that's why I'm a Democrat. I'll admit it. I respect my Republican friends, and I'm more than happy to work with them on most things. But if you start to treat somebody without dignity, done. That's a walk away for me. And I will be very honest about that. I think the death penalty is a prime example of that. There are so many issues that go with the death penalty, and we need to get rid of it because of those issues. That's in our state. So I really don't know if that will actually be brought up this time or not. I'm hopeful. I know that I spoke out very adamantly. I picked up the torch from others in the past and continue to believe that we need to get rid of it in our state. It does not do anything to help human dignity, period. So I think those are some examples. Another example is how we look at our revenue sources. Are we truly creating a revenue source that helps us pay for the services we need? Take a look at our Health and Human Services. Take a look at our Department of Unemployment, our DMV. We're not able to keep people in office or in those positions because they're leaving because of how little pay we give them. We need to be aware of these things, and we need to do something about it. And for us to say, oh, well, now we're going to divert money over to this area or to that area, that's not going to address the issues, that's a problem.
So one of the things we talked a lot about on that show, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. There's the Economic Forum this week came out and said there's an $11.4 billion economic surplus coming. Right. And that's great. Also, thank you, Governor Sisolak, for actually leading us out of this pandemic and having a bounce back, as we said he did. So thanks, everyone, for listening to that and voting him back in. But my thought on that, and we had a big discussion around that, was, okay, great, we have a surplus. We should put some of that in the rainy day fund if, God forbid, there's ever another crisis, or when there's another crisis, since we haven't diversified our economy yet. We should invest in mental health. We know in the early 90s, there had to be cuts to mental health because we must have a balanced budget in the state of Nevada. We should invest some of that. We saw coming out of the pandemic that we lack north and south in our mental health services and funding for mental health services and facilities for mental health services. So in my mind, rather than giving vouchers to rich people to send their kids to private school, I think of about 11.4 billion other things we could fund in this state because it's all woefully underfunded. What are some of the things you wish we would fund instead of thinking about things like vouchers?
Thank you so much. What a great opening. I think my top 3 priorities would be number 1, our health and human services. I know that we have had significant investments, both because of help from the federal area, but then also because of the dedication of, former Assembly member Chair Carlton and Governor Sisolak and others who took a look at our budget. We're like, no, we're going to start putting more money into health and human services. But are we utilizing the matching funds that we can when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid? That's a huge lift, and we need to do something with it. We continue to talk about it. Well, let's start doing it. And I know that our Ways and Means last session started some elements, and I'm so sorry I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do know that we had some bills that started doing that. We need to continue that work, and we need to expand it. That's number 1. My number 2 thing is education, but I think we need to start being a little bit more realistic about what do I mean by education. It is not K-12 anymore. It is pre-K to 16. We need to look at how our university system is being utilized, whether it is the traditional 4-year, which actually is 6-year if we're really being honest, or if it's the junior colleges, or even some of our trade schools that are kind of not traditional, but still under the public umbrella. We need to start being aware of that. When we take a look at the employment openings, how many truck drivers do we need? We need a ton. Well, guess what? There's a way for us to be able to start this earlier than just waiting until they're 24 and deciding I'm going to go do this in 3 months. No, we've got to start working on it now. We have to start investing in our unions' apprenticeship programs. We have an excellent one up here in the Northern Nevada area. I know you guys have one as well in the Southern Nevada area. Let's work with our unions in getting these apprenticeship programs working. For example, there's a school in San Francisco that has this, where they literally are able to do an apprenticeship. I believe it's with pipe fitters and plumbers. I'm not sure about exactly which union it is, but then they're also getting high school credit because guess what? That's applied mathematics and that's applied scientific work. And then when they write up the work order, that's applied English. We need to start looking at things like that. And that does not need to be in a charter school or in a private school program. That can be in a signature academy that's under our traditional school district umbrella. That takes time, that takes partnerships, and more importantly, it takes people willing to work with each other. And that's the hardest thing. And then finally, the last thing I would love for us to start thinking about, really, we've got to do something about our infrastructure. We continue to have more and more houses being built at an incredibly high amount of money to have to pay for these houses. We talk about the houses. We discuss a little bit about the roads and bridges. Great news is, again, federal government has come in and given us a large amount of money because of the work of Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, which let's celebrate that win, as well as Senator Rosen. Both have been huge on the Senate side. On the House side, we've got the, already mentioned Titus as a Representative Titus, as well as Stephen, and the person up here, we don't need to mention him. And then I think I'm missing somebody from the Clark County area.
Susie Lee.
Susie Lee, thank you. But our 3 really strong Democrats have been great for us in getting that infrastructure for the highways, for the bridges. But can we also start talking about the sewer? Nobody wants to talk about it, but you bring in more people, we got to figure out where that's going to go. So we've got to be realistic about it. And although I said that there are 3, water, sorry, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over. And that might have been the saying of Virginia City, but it's still true in our world today. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to make sure that we've got enough water to be able to handle the growth both in the northern as well as southern area? We are doing okay in the northern area of diversifying a little bit with more and more companies coming out here. but can we handle the amount of growth, and can we continue to bring in water like we need to? So, and also my cat has decided to join us. So sorry about that.
We are animal and child friendly on this show.
Oh, so Paddington will probably talk. So there you go.
So I want to we talked big picture. All of those things are super important. I literally used that Mark Twain quote this morning on the radio when I was talking about water.
Hey.
As a native Nevadan, you kind of know those things, right?
I'm sorry. I think that's on our birth certificate. Will you at least once use this quote in your life that you must be a native Nevadan? Okay, got it.
So obviously, you're going to be working on a lot of stuff personally. You've got your BDRs coming up. The first kind of big BDR deadline is coming up this week. Talk to us about what bills you're working on and what bills you're super excited about for this session.
So I'm actually going to toot my own horn a little bit because of a group of people, including you, helped me with it. Last session, we were able to get through in a bipartisan support, almost unanimous. The one person that voted against it came to me later and said I should have voted for it. And I said, yep, you should have. We were able to get college tuition free for members of our Native American tribes and also our descendants of. And so as long as they've lived in Nevada for a year, there's all these things. Well, since then, we've now had it for a year, and great news, we had 148 students who went to the University of Nevada on it. And there were additional 6 that actually qualified for some other fees and everything to be waived because of it. So to me, that's a success. I realize that in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't seem like 148, but that's big. But since then, we found that there are some issues with it. And so it's a cleanup bill on that. That is a passion project. And so that's going to be number 1 as to what I'm excited about. But number 2, we've got some possibilities of some revenue generating things that will take us a little bit of time to get through. And so it's good that we've got the surplus that was mentioned during Economic Forum the last few days. So that way we can try to get this revenue going. One thing that I'm really excited about is the possibility of, and I know it doesn't sound very exciting, but closing that the hotel room tax, that when you get a hotel room online, all the taxes that go with it, they charge you the full amount of what you pay, not necessarily what the state is being reported. So that's one thing I'm going to try to get through. Another thing is a possibility of looking at the wealth tax, and what exactly does that mean? I realize that that's really, really, really rough right now. We're still trying to work through all the details with it, but we got to start being realistic. Massachusetts just passed in their last election. Actually, it was passed by the voters. Washington State is going through the court system with it right now. There's a way for us to work with this, and we need to start being realistic about where we are and how we pay our bills. Finally, education is my world. I'm a teacher. And so I've got some education ideas going around in my head. There's just a lot happening, but we've got to respect the profession. And one way that I feel that we do not respect the profession currently is the grade scale. And I feel that the grade scale should be something that is at the discretion of the teacher. And so that's going to be a lot of discussion. So that's what I'm excited about. What I'm nervous about, and what I feel that will be probably one of the largest issues. And I've got to do more research. I'm not going to lie and say automatically I know exactly where I am on this one. I really do believe that the school district sizes will be a large discussion this time, as will the school board trustee issue and who can serve and if it should be elected or appointed and all those things. That was a big discussion over the interim, and I have a feeling it's going to be a big discussion this session as well.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question on that then. We had a discussion last week with educators from NSEA and various folks from around the state and Trustee Guzman, who was here talking for NSEA about splitting up the school districts equitably, and that's a big discussion around the state because we don't want kids in rural Nevada being disproportionately harmed if we are to split up, rural Nevada from southern Nevada, from northern Nevada, right? Like that has to be split equitably. And then if you split up the Clark County School District, which is the 5th largest in the country, how do you make sure the have and the have-nots are not being pitted against each other and that the schools are being equitably split? How do you split up the property that the school district owns? How do you make sure, like, there's not cities that everybody lives in Southern Nevada? How do you make sure those kids are taken care of, right? So those equity issues, especially when it comes to education, are so critical and must be kept at the front of our minds. How do we do that? And how do we ensure that our legislators keep that in mind as we're having those discussions?
So first of all, I'm so happy you guys had that conversation last week, because Clark County has more than 330 schools and work sites that are under the school district. Washoe County has 100 and I want to say it's 18, again, school and work sites, which unfortunately Washoe County and Clark County oftentimes gets lumped together when it comes to the school district. When truly, if we're being honest about school district size, you've got Uber, which is uber big, not Uber, but uber big. You've got big, and then you've got regular size and Paddington biting. So, I mean, that's our reality of our school districts. Washoe is something like the 48th largest school district in the nation as well. So we're also in the top 50s. I'm sorry. I think that's just in the NEA family. So how do we do it equitably? And I think that's the largest issue. I've continually brought up the Kansas City issue that happened a number of years ago, where Kansas also went through the same thing like this. And they found that when they were trying to do the school district, I believe it was in Kansas City, where one school district was predominantly of one race and the other was not. That's not acceptable. There's a reason why we have Brown v. Board of Education still is so important to us, and Thurgood Marshall, and all of those arguments we have to continue to keep at the forefront. How do we do so? We bring it up every single time. And people will be uncomfortable, and that's okay, because sometimes the strongest, most important decisions will make people uncomfortable, and we have to be willing to have those discussions. And I think exactly what your point is, that's so hard. How do you figure out, well, all of these schools are going to be in Sparks, which is the area that I'm from, and that's going to be in that school district, but all of these schools are going to be in the Northwest Reno School District. How is that okay? Is that still going to have a division of both racial, financial, even spiritual, and also the property taxes? How is that figured out? There's so many more levels than people just think, oh, it's too large. Well, there's a lot going on. The other thing that we've got to think about is, how much will each superintendent be paid? Will each area also have a certain number of board members? Will each area also have a certain number of buses in that divided out? And it's not because the buses are crazy expensive. You've got busing, you've got technology, you've got the textbooks, which, although people don't say that we still use old school textbooks, I still do. All of those elements have got to be discussed, and they've got to be part of the discussion. And if they're not, then somebody needs to be willing to go to the front of the table and be like, excuse me, you have not discussed this. It needs to be discussed. And that's what we need to do.
Absolutely.
I wish I could give like a nice, neat little answer, but it's education. We never believe in nice, neat little presents. We just don't do that.
That's not how it works. Absolutely.
We are.
We have 2 questions in the chat. I want to remind folks at home, if you have questions for Assemblywoman Anderson, she's going to have to hop off here in a minute because she has to go to another event, but we still have Shane, and then we have Matilda as well. So we want to get to as many questions as you have, but I want to get to some audience questions for Assemblywoman Anderson very quickly. Put them in the chat. Also, if you like this conversation, share it on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, you name it, we're there. Make sure you're sharing it out with your friends and family, because we want them to know what's going to be happening in the legislative session. So first question, and Shane, if you want to jump in here, I know you had some thoughts on it as well. Good evening. I have a concern regarding rental prices. Is there any way to restrict rent prices based on your salary? So Assemblywoman, I'm going to have you take the first pass at this, and then Shane, if you want to jump in, please do.
That'd be great. So right now, legally, I think it's an excellent question. And legally, I don't know the background for that answer as to whether or not you can have like a cap based upon how much you make. I do know that there are, at this time, 548 bills that have been filed for in the legislature, and you can look that up in under Nellis. And so that's pretty easy to find and everything. I know that the housing issue is huge in both northern as well as southern, as well as some other areas of our state. You cannot be a first-year nurse. You cannot be a first-year teacher. You cannot be a first-year so many things and find some place to live. You can't even be a 10th year. And then I think somebody else also brought up the homeless issue. We need to do something about that. I wish I could just say, here's the answer, here's the bill, but I do know that there will be a bill, at least one, if not more, that will deal with the home issue. I know that culinary was working on it as well. I want to say that they started talking with me about it like last May, maybe. And they continually bring it up because it is a large issue with our culinary union. How do we find someplace safe to live? And I would agree with the individual who asked the question. I wish I could give an answer. Here it is. I do know that it's going to be brought up. And I will continue, and I will make a promise that I will ask that very question. Will there ever be any sort of ties to how much somebody makes as well? I know that sometimes those are on some applications when you're renting, but that has caused some other problems as well, because then some people are denied because of it. You've got some other issues that go with it. But with that discussion, I will bring up questions like that. I'll make that promise to you.
Thank you. Shane, you want to talk a little bit about both the rental prices, which is obviously huge north and south, but also the houselessness issue. We talked about that on KNPR as well this morning, and not incarcerating people simply for being homeless, and also many of the times we need to deal with the mental health issues that people are going through, and that also leads to that. But you guys see this firsthand every single day at the food bank. So talk to us about some of the things around housing and houselessness that y'all have seen and hope to work on this session, Shane.
I am anxiously waiting to see what the housing bills are. I will say this, like, the food bank has always supported Senator Ratty's work and others in the legislature who have tried to sort of deal with affordable housing issues head on since going back to at least 2017, possibly 2015. And I just want to say, like, we're serving probably, 8-10% more people now than we were even a year ago. And almost all of that has to do with housing issues, which, if you want a real number, we're serving around 122,000 people a month, give or take. So I am deeply curious about what the housing bills are and to figure out how we can get some real movement behind that. And I just generally have a lot of concerns about that. And then, there's been a lot of experimentation across the country about, rental caps and tying, different models of what affordable housing might look like, what access to affordable housing might look like. At the federal level, I think the Section 8 housing situation is broken. When the Nevada Housing Authority or the Reno Housing Authority says that they're opening the wait list to get onto it, which could be 5 years from now, like, the whole thing is just messed up. And I deeply appreciate the fact that, Governor Sisolak put $500 million into a fund for affordable housing and also gave us rental assistance, but that is a Band-Aid at best. So I'm not knocking the work. I am just saying, like, we are so far away from where the goalpost needs to be on actually, handling this issue. And then, frankly, with the affordable housing issue comes the fact that we also have to deal with food deserts. So, as people end up moving further out east into Lyon County or Churchill County up here, Nye, Esmeralda, Lincoln down there, to find affordable places to live, they are literally moving away from the entire sort of like civil social safety net that we all depend on and that we living in these urban areas take for granted. 10-minute drive for me is 2 different grocery stores at a 7-Eleven. When you are, living in Dayton or Silver Springs or Pioche or Boulder City or whatever, like, do you have the luxury? Probably not. I do want to talk about one thing before NASA goes really quickly. When we were talking about splitting up the school districts, was, Governor Sisolak continued this year as policy universal free lunch. Nevada was only one of 5 states across the country to do that. That is something that I am deeply interested in working on for the next legislative session. And I've got some really wonky ideas around community eligibility provision in Provision 2 and all those things that like nobody knows anything about. But when we talk about leaving money on the table, the fewer students that we are able to get enrolled into, existing pass-through programs through the USDA to the schools, the better off we are. Number one, it reduces the number of people that are going to have to worry about unpaid school lunch balances at the end of the year. And number two, it actually brings fiscal stability to the school districts themselves. And when we are talking about splitting up the school districts, that is something to consider. So we need to think about also just not the quantity of lunches that we are serving, but also the quality of those lunches that are served. And quite frankly, the rural school districts, if we are not able to get to universal free lunch, are going to be completely left out of the conversation because under the current federal rules, they're so small, they will never qualify because their student body population is never going to hit the 64% that's required in order to be eligible for a school-wide free universal program for breakfast and lunch. So those are sort of like the things that are top of mind for me at this moment.
Thank you, Shane. The last question for Assemblywoman Anderson.
Before I jump off, I do want to do a really quick push. I'm so sorry. Tomorrow, I just need to do a really quick push for tomorrow's canned food drive. The Grand Sierra Resort and Channel 2 News is doing their usual, and the Food Bank of Northern Nevada is doing their usual Home for the Holidays food bank, like food competition thing. I will be helping out. It starts at 12 o'clock tomorrow. It goes, I think, until 6 or 6:30. I will be helping out starting at 4:10. So if you're in Northern Nevada and feel like dropping off some food, it'd be awesome for you to do so. So sorry to do that.
Oh, you're good. And we'll share that out on our social. All right. I know you have to hop. Last question for you before you go is from Wood Tunes. They ask, why can't students age and grading access set the equity stage? Can we start with assuring that the most needy are first?
So I think that's an excellent question because of the idea of equity. What do we mean by that? Like at this time, if you're in certain grades, first grade, second grade, well, not always, but in some areas, you actually do not earn an A or B. You earn a satisfactory or unsatisfactory. And then as you go up, it changes. So that's one thing. I do think the student age and grading access is something that we really do need to discuss in a much deeper level, and also not necessarily set at a school board or school district level. I have a hard time with that. I feel that it is kind of a school as well as professional learning community, the teachers, the parents, getting a chance to talk with each other and figure those things out. Because it's one thing for people to say, okay, universally, everybody's going to do this. When in actuality, there are so many other elements that we need to discuss. And that one of those things has to do with access to the different supplies, to the different learning elements. If you are in a school that is 100% technology, which by the way, I'm not a fan of, you will have a very different education than somebody that is not, especially if the Wi-Fi access is not always up to date. Even though we've had a significant investment, let's be realistic. It's going to take a while for it all to come out over there. And so I think the idea of assuring the most needy is first is something that's very important to have, but we also have to be realistic with what is happening right now with some of our funding and how it's now following the child, not necessarily the zip code. And so we have to be realistic about those items. I understand where the question is coming from, and I think there's a large amount of merit to it. Devil's in the details, and how do we figure that out? And I hate to have to be that person, but sometimes you got to be that person.
Absolutely, 100%. All right. How do folks get in touch with you? You're going to be at the Progressive Summit. You're one of our confirmed speakers. Super excited about that. So people can see you at the Progressive Summit again this year. Sign up for your tickets now. But how do folks get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about the legislative process or just follow what you're doing?
I'm always happy to have people email me, natha@votenatha.com, or also the legislative email, but I just know my election one off the top of my head easier, which is natha@votenatha.com. I'm also on Facebook as well as Twitter, but I've got to be realistic with everybody. I am not a Twitter person, especially with what's all happening lately. So I don't check it very often. I realize that makes me a horrible person because I don't check it as much as I should, but email is always best. And then also I've got my cell phone and I do actually answer my texts and stuff. So you're always welcome to do that. That's also on my website. So that's area code 775-343-9139.
You're the best. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. And I think that there was something about the home healthcare workers. We do not have enough of them. And that I know was a priority of the governor's. And I believe there is, again, some legislation that's going to be possibly coming forward. I'm very hopeful for the discussions that I've had in the past.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you soon. All right, Shane, I'm coming to you. Shane, you talked a little bit about what the Northern Nevada Food Bank does, but talk to us about the work you do every day and what bills you're hopefully looking forward to this session, knowing what we know about what session is probably going to look like this year.
I'll be honest, I cannot adequately comment on any educated manner on what bills I am looking forward to this session, because frankly, leadership hasn't given us a direction on where they're going. And when you read the bill draft request, for all I know, it could be a bowl of Fruit Loops that they are actually trying to bring forward. So with that, I think that just because we have a Republican governor-elect does not mean that we stop the work to address the root causes of poverty. And I am really going to be optimistic that some of the work that we started in 17, 19, and 21 will continue. And, dealing with affordable housing and food access, in 2021, we created the Home Feeds Nevada program, and the Department of Agriculture has worked with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to help get money into that so that the state food banks, Three Square in Las Vegas and the Food Bank of Northern Nevada up here, can get access to Nevada produced products to be distributed through the state, right? I have got some serious concerns about adequacy of resources for food security in the rurals. They are often overlooked, and the rurals are getting more and more populous when you think about it. Lyon County, just on the other side of the hill here in Reno, is, I believe, Nevada's third largest county now. That used to be, the honor used to be given to Elko County out in the far eastern edge of the state. So the state demography is changing, but I really am concerned that the policies to support the residents of the state is really lagging behind. So another thing that the food bank has been working on is that, you've heard of the after school backpack program for weekends, where the students would bring home a backpack full of basically snacks that would be enough for one 12-year-old to eat in about 2 hours. Our food bank has been slowly in Washoe County, in Humboldt County and Elko County, transitioning those to actual school pantries on site to support the entire family. So there's a lot of work to be done around expanding that into some of the other rural counties. And, maintaining the existing ones that we have and making sure that parents have got adequate access at hours that are reasonable to access them, right? It makes no sense for us to have a pantry open from 12 to 2 when everybody's working jobs, or, they work graveyard shift and they're not out. So those are some of the sort of broader things that we're working on. But frankly, with this session, we need to, like Natha said, we need to address revenue. I'm looking forward to trying to figure out what that looks like, but we need revenue that isn't regressive revenue. We need to figure out how we can diversify not only the economy, but the way that the state gets budget, funds the budget that isn't dependent on a tourist and recreational based economy. And with climate change, we have seen the ski seasons up here in the north get shorter and shorter and shorter. And the summers, if we're not completely choked out by wildfires, are really dry. So some of the really fun activities that we used to do, whitewater rafting and stuff like that, is becoming really challenging when the Truckee River is so dry in the middle of August, you can walk across it without getting your feet wet. So I think that climate change is really going to have to be addressed as an anti-poverty program as much as it is a climate, an environmental issue. And making sure that Nevada has got access to the food that we need in order to sustain the population that we have. I don't have any idea what that would look like right now, but these are conversations that really have to be had.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So in terms of the new makeup of the situation, with the Dems controlling the state legislature, but a Republican controlling the governor's mansion, and this is not a Sandoval Republican. I know people want to say he is, but he's not.
As long as he's not Jim Gibbons.
Well, I think he's a fine line between the two. Anyways, what do you think is going to happen this session on some of the priority issues that you have, some of the priority issues that you and I have worked on in the past? I mean, my thought is we're going to probably hold the line on a lot of the progress we made, hopefully, and probably not see too much action from here. But even just holding the line in my mind is a win. And so making sure that the Democrats hold strong is key. Where are you at in terms of that kind of stuff?
I'm with you. I think that if we're able to just maintain what we have and not go backwards is going to be essentially a win. But what also concerns me, though, is like we need the legislature to pay attention to what's going on administratively so that we don't lose ground on other areas, so that whoever, if they decide to make a leadership change at the Department of Health and Human Services or at the Department of Agriculture, we don't lose ground. So the Department of Agriculture is responsible for the administration of the National School Lunch Program. And there's a bill out there to move the Office of Food Security from the Department of Health and Human Services to the Department of Agriculture, which makes perfect sense to me. When we make sure that we don't lose ground on like the Medicaid expansion and all this other stuff administratively. So we really need the legislature to sort of like be hyper aware of what's happening internally as the government does turn over, so that we don't just hold the line at the legislature, but lose yardage at the administrative level and, through the rulemaking process.
Absolutely. And that's going to be key on some of the key issues we worked on last session, like, public option and those kinds of things. So,
and, we have to hold the line on some of the changes that we made with decriminalizing a lot of the, like traffic offenses and like small, like misdemeanor things. And then I heard today that the sheriff here in Washoe County wants an ordinance that would, make camping in public spaces illegal. So, if we're going to criminalize that and we're going to put them back into the Washoe County jail or put them into the Nevada State prison system where they're already, on a hunger strike because the conditions are so bad, like we don't want to go backwards. We've got to continue to figure out how to, as Natha put it, treat each other with dignity. And I'm just really hopeful that the legislature is able to continue to at least respect the fact that we all need to be, treat each other with dignity and handle ourselves in a dignified way.
Absolutely. All right, Matilda, I want to bring you into the conversation. You are newer to this process, but you're not completely new. You've been through a few special sessions and legislative session with us in another role at one of our partner organizations. Talk to us about how you're feeling going into this year's session and some of the things that you have been thinking about as compared to last session.
Well, I'm staying calm. I'm trying to stay as realistic as possible, and I'm ready to continue doing my part to continue fighting for everyday Nevadans. I'm looking forward to holding folks accountable and uplifting those who put Nevadans first. And just like you said, Annette, we're not rolling back on any of the great strides that the Silver State has made in the past several sessions. We need to continue holding the line, and we need to make sure that we're not going backwards. And I want to see big waves to improve access to mental health services. And hello, Kitty, climate change and voting rights, and of course, housing. One of the things that I've been doing differently this time around is honestly just learning a lot more of the process, getting to see and hone in on the more technical matters, so making sure that I truly understand the process and I'm ready and excited to continue doing the good work that we do.
So, Matilda, you worked on some of the voting rights issues last session. Talk to us about some of the strides we made on voting rights and some of the key things we want to make sure don't get rolled backwards this time, and why that's so important for the Democrats to hold the line on those issues in terms of making sure every eligible Nevadan can vote.
So during the previous legislative cycle, Assembly Bill 321 was spearheaded by Speaker Jason Ryerson. And what this bill does is that it does a bunch of things. But one of the major things that it does is that it sends every active registered voter a mail ballot with prepaid postage for every election to come. Now, let's say someone knows that they don't want a mail ballot, or some have been calling it paper ballot, same exact thing. Hate to break it all to you, same exact thing. You can submit an opt-out form. The most beautiful thing about this program, about mail ballots, is that it allows folks to be able to fill out their mail ballot, to have their voices heard from the comfort of their home. They're able to do the research that they need to do. They're able to talk to folks, and they're able to have the support that they need to do this. One of the things that I really adore about vote by mail is that in 2020, in the Boulder City municipal election, over 60% of the voter turnout voted by mail. So if Boulder City in 2020 can have such a large voter turnout like that by mail, I'm looking forward to seeing where that number goes from then. It's very important for folks to continue holding the line when it comes to big issues like access to the ballot box, because this is how people make change. This is how everyday Nevadans, every single person on this call, those who are listening, those who are working extremely hard right now to make those changes possible. When folks have access to the ballot box, and when folks are able to do it when folks are able to do it in a way that they feel most safe and secure and accessible, this is how we're able to continue revitalizing our economies and making sure that we're making the changes that we need to see happen.
So, Matilda, I'm going to start with you on this question, then I'm going to move back to Shane. How can folks get involved with the legislative process? We just did a big training today with our staff on legislative process and lobbying 101. You've been through this process before. What are some of the best ways for folks who live in Las Vegas or Reno, or even the rural areas not near Carson City? What are some of the best ways for them to get involved, and how do they make their voices heard?
So there's actually several ways that folks can have their voices heard and be involved in the process in English and in Spanish. Folks can contact their elected officials and let them know how they feel about specific issues or bills. Folks can even call their elected officials, send them an email, write them a handwritten letter, or even request to meet with them in person and tell them their story. One of my favorite things about the Nevada legislature website, Nellis, like the street, but without the other L, is the Share Your Opinion page. This was something that I heavily stalked all the time during the previous legislative cycle. And what I like about this page is that folks can literally type up their thoughts about a specific bill, or specific bills in my case, and literally type in their address and tell your elected officials exactly how they feel about it. And once you click send, it goes straight to their inbox, so they're bound to see it. And it's amazing because this is a great way for folks, regardless of where they are, to be able to share their stories and making sure that they have their voices heard. Folks can also testify in person at the Capitol in Carson City or at Grant Sawyer in Southern Nevada. And the cool thing is you can even call in and testify. In fact, this is a little bit of like a core memory for me. The first time I've ever testified was actually in this room, on the other side of this room, when I had things configured a little bit differently, but you can call in and testify. And also make sure you can testify in both English and in Spanish, or they have translators there, so you're able to have your voice heard in the language that you feel most comfortable in. I also think it's also cool to mention that the Capitol is the people's house. There are lobby days like Conservation Lobby Day, AAPI Lobby Day, Equality Lobby Day, and more, where you can go to Carson City and meet with your elected officials and tell them your story. And another way, and I highly recommend this, is to keep up with us on social media. I know that BBP and our partners are going to do a kick-ass job of keeping folks involved and up to date with what's happening in the ledge. Also, if you look up the hashtag NVLedge on Twitter and you can keep up with the hot gossip. But if you really want to be kept up to date, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok. I know I got some pretty cool plans for our TikTok, so if you're not following us yet, you should.
All right, Shane, as we wrap up, same question for you as we get ready to go into the legislative session and it starts on February 6th. What are some of the things people should prepare for to get ready to lobby or advocate for the issues or bills they care about? And what are some of the ways that regular folks at home who don't do this job every single day can get involved in the process?
Well, 100%, they should definitely check in with you or the Human Services Network up here in the North. Like there's a lot of, NSEA, like there's a lot of different organizations that are going to be paying attention to what's going on and plugging into them, and plugging into, organizations that have got reliable and trustworthy information about the bills that are out there. Misinformation is always a problem. And the other thing I want to say, is you can actually write up a testimony and send it to the committee so that you don't have to testify in person and still have it included in the record. I have to say, I love Nevada because they have made, even before the pandemic, there were a lot of different ways that you could get involved, either sharing your opinion or submitting testimonies or going to the Grant Sawyer or the legislative building. Like, we really are an accessible state. And I love that. And if you, want to reach out to me or anybody else in the space for some help on crafting what that might look like or tracking down bills that are of importance to you, then, reach out and we'll help you figure out what those are. And every single bill is listed in Nellis, so definitely go make an account there so that you can get into, to be able to see all of the bills as they drop during the course of session and then figure out when the hearings are and all of that. But I have to say, though, that the legislature really does have, I think, compared to other states, a really good system to help us stay involved and informed on what's happening when.
And I will just say, if you're in Southern Nevada, you can go to the Grant Sawyer building and testify from there. Yeah. If you're in Elko, there's a building up there that you can testify from. Yeah. If you're in Carson, you can do it at the building. But you can also, they're keeping all of the COVID rules too for the legislature now. And they're still going to let us call in. Plus you have the, share your opinion page and all of that good stuff. So there's so many ways to make your voices heard. Get on a bus with our org or one of the other progressive organizations. Call your legislator, send them an email, send them a handwritten letter, send them a postcard. There's so many different ways to lobby and make your voices heard. All of those things count and all of those things are important. So, it's not just being in the building, which being in the building is important, but it's all those other ways you can make your voice heard that count as well. Any other tips or tricks, Shane, from your years of lobbying that people should know before they head up?
No, all I'm going to say is this: if you don't show up, if you have a strong opinion and you don't share it, then you're sacrificing that opinion to the guy who does show up. Don't do that. Absolutely.
All right. Final thoughts, Shane and Matilda, on what we expect this legislative session with the new governor. And, some of the compromises and the potential for us to get things done. Shane, I'll let you go first.
I think it's going to be a wild ride. I do. I think that there's going to be some really ugly conversations about, school choice and, crime and other things. I'm really going to hold out hope that everybody is mature and is able to figure out how to compromise and not sell out our values like you talked about. But I think that as the new governor figures out what he signed up for, I think it's going to be a wild ride. So I think we're just going to have to hunker down and just stay focused and not lose sight of what's important.
I agree. Matilda, what are your thoughts on the new governor, how legislative session's going to go, kind of the themes of session, and what progressives who are watching this tonight need to pay attention to?
You know, I really hope that the governor-elect keeps in mind that Nevadans are already living through climate change. There's heat waves, drought, air pollution, and honestly, it's already affecting our health and our environment, and honestly, our ability to make a living wage. So, Shane, when you brought that up, I was straight up clapping over here. I don't think you saw me, but agree. I really hope that he keeps that in mind, especially because with the Breathe Free Nevada report, it's found that Nevada's communities of color are the most impacted by the climate crisis, and we don't have time to waste. So I hope that all elected officials, regardless of their party, do the right thing to continue fighting for Nevadans. And if that means working across the aisle and making compromises that put Nevadans first and not others, that's exactly what they need to do. And I also think it's very important for folks to to maintain realistic and to keep their expectations as realistic as possible, and to make sure that we're putting Nevadans' interest at first, and to always keep the community in mind. Because at the end of the day, the work that we're doing and the reason for behind the governor's job is to govern, and to making sure that we're putting everyday Nevadans' interests first, and for prioritizing their health and well-being.
There's just a comment in the chat from Laura and she was saying that we need to be paying attention to the administrative piece and what's happening with the governor's appointments and things like that. I could not agree more. Oftentimes those appointments and things that are done behind the scenes and implementation or not implementing bills is another key area where governors have a lot of power. So we're definitely going to have to watch that as well. And also, after we get done with legislative session, watching all of the interim committees to see what's happening there. So lots to do, lots to work on, lots coming up for the Nevada legislature. Like I said, I'll be moving up to Carson City here in February to spend quality time with Shane again, like we always do every other spring. And we'll be out in front every Thursday and then towards the end every night to keep you in the loop about what's going on at the NV Ledge. So thank you, Shane. Thank you, Matilda, for joining us. Also, big thanks to Assemblywoman Anderson for joining us, especially right before the holidays. We appreciate all of you. But before we go, I want Shelby to come on, Shelby Schwartz, who is our development manager here at Battleborn Progress, to make an exciting announcement about the Progressive Summit. We're having a virtual summit again, a statewide summit again in January. She's going to tell you the dates, the times, and also give you our big announcement of our first keynote speaker that we are announcing today. So Shelby, take it away.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Annette, for having me on. It's always fun to come on and be on OIF out in front. We have the 2023 Progressive Summit already on the horizon. We are going to be hosting it virtually again. So it's a statewide event. Everybody can join. Everybody can be a part of it. It'll be January 21st and 22nd, 2023, around 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. both days. Give us some wiggle room there because we're trying to squeeze in some extra fun keynotes. But we do have our very first keynote announcement that was sent out today. If you're on our email list, you saw this first, or if you follow us on social, you saw this first. So get on our email list and follow us on social. But our very first keynote that we announced today is Congressman Ro Khanna, our friend from California. He'll be joining us on Saturday around 5 p.m., Saturday, January 21st. You should still get your tickets early. They're going to sell out. I know that they are, especially with a keynote as great as Ro and the other folks who are trying to get lined up already. You can get your tickets at bit.ly/PS23 RSVP for tickets. I know our team already has that ready to go to throw in the chat. Tickets are $15 for 2 days, $10 for a 1-day pass. We also have scholarships. If you need a scholarship, we also have those available. We never want price to be a prohibitive factor for folks that want to get involved and participate. So we also do have those. And then if you are an organization or if you're just a benevolent millionaire who happened upon our stream tonight and you want to sponsor the Progressive Summit. Sponsorships can be found at bit.ly/PS23 sponsor. And it's all lowercase for both of those links. That's very important. Bitly will get mad if you capitalize where you're not supposed to. So we're very excited. The theme for this year is Democracy Defended. What do we save next? Because Nevada is always out here saving people and saving democracy and saving the country. So we want to discuss what's next, which includes the legislative session, because we're sure we're going to have to be fighting to save some stuff and see what happens there. So please join us. Please get your tickets. And if you need more information, my email is shelby@battlebornprogress.org, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Shelby. And thank you all for joining us. Again, the Progressive Summit will be January 21st and 22nd of 2023, all virtual, all online, so we can do it completely statewide. We'll have legislators joining us. We'll have congressional members joining us. There's going to be a bunch more announcements coming up about more keynotes. So you're not going to want to miss it. It's always a great weekend. We're also probably going to have some in-person events before the summit this year with some surprises. So lots coming up. You're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you get your ticket now. The tickets usually fill up right after the holidays. So it's a great time to get your ticket and get in line so that you can be at the summit this year. And again, all online. So it'll be completely statewide. We'll have speakers from both ends of the state to make sure that everybody is making their voices heard. So super excited about that again. So thank you, Shelby, for all your hard work on the summit. Thank you, Shane and Matilda, again, for joining us. And thank you all for another fabulous year of Out in Front as we come to a close here in 2022. I am so thankful for all of you, thankful to all of the folks who watch every week, thankful to all of you who support our work here at Battleborn Progress. We could not do this without you. So please consider making an end-of-year donation as well. We need the support as we go into 2023 in the Nevada legislature. So if you have the means and are able to make an end-of-year gift, we will put the link in the chat. We are doing a whole holiday fundraiser that Shelby's putting together, but definitely need your support so we can close out this holiday year or holiday and year strong. So thank you all for always supporting our work, and thank you for supporting the mission of Battleborn Progress and the good work that our team does every single day. And big thank you to my team this year. They kicked ass this past election cycle and everything. I could not do this work without our entire team and our board of directors. They are simply incredible. So big shout out to our team as we close the year. I will not be here next week. Next week's my birthday and I'm going to Hawaii. So I will be on a beach somewhere. But my team will be doing Out in Front next week without me. They will be doing Out in Front on Thursday at 5 p.m. Will be hosting, and it's going to be a year in review. So you're not going to want to miss it. We're going to have the whole team on to talk about a year in review and all of the good stuff that we've done. So again, sign up for the Progressive Summit. Make sure you're signing up, especially for like our lobbying trainings and things like that at the summit. Make an end of year donation, and I'll see you all in 2023. Happy New Year, everyone. Have a great holiday season. We'll talk soon. See you soon.